Welcome back. Welcome in. This is Country Roads Confidential at earsports.com, part of the Paramount Podcast Network. I am Mike Casazza, sitting down here to pick the defensive depth chart, pick apart the defensive two deep for West Virginia following Saturday's spring game at Mountaineer Field. We went over the offense on Tuesday morning. Back again to help me sort through things. Chris Anderson. Chris asked you about general thoughts last time we talked about the spring game here. No need to rehash that, but we focused mostly on offense and how that kind of had brought some bravado, some swagger, but also how things maybe hadn't changed too much about what the spring game meant, but also how fans felt. And as I sit here and think about what you said when I said that day, it kind of feels like the same for me on defense, where people aren't too concerned about the defense. They've had a lot of continuity on the staff and also the roster. Some of the holes they filled looks like they've done a good job. So people were not really panicked about it before. Could have been when you look at the number of players they lost to the portal. But people still feel pretty confident with the scheme and the coaches and who they brought in. I kind of feel like a slightly different meeting, but people really don't feel that much differently. Their attitudes about the defense haven't changed. They feel confident in it. They'd probably like to see something more definitive as far as a dominant defense, but again, they feel like it's capable because they've seen them get pretty close in the past too.
Yeah, well, this is the kind of goodwill you build up when you have coaching changes and personnel changes and young guys, and the defense is still good, and that's what West Virginia has done with Jordan Leslie the last couple of years, and then even Mick Kenning before that. This team, has it been top 10? No, but it's been a defense that you can win games with, and they have been thrown a lot of curveballs on that side of the ball, and they've just made it work. And when you can do that for 2-3 years in a row, people believe in you. People that, like you said, they lost thousands of snaps to transfer, multiple starters. There is no clear experience in the secondary, really, outside of maybe Charles Woods and maybe St. McLeod. I mean, Woods has started a handful of games towards the end of the year. McLeod stepped in towards the end of the year. But outside of that's it. And I seem to be the only one that's truly concerned about what's going on the back end there, because everybody else is like, hey, these coaches have done it before, and they feel confident in what they got. So we feel confident they're going to do it again.
That's wild, isn't it?
It is absolutely wild.
Part of me sits there and goes, well, why is Chris so worried? And part of me is like, oh yeah, those secondary players are a primary concern for me right now too. And then again, we saw some of the issues about that in the spring game too, where second line guys had a really hard time covering. I think that had a lot to do with the offensive success, at least for some of the passes and the deep ball numbers in particular too. But those guys probably aren't going to be out there a ton, and we've seen them before. They don't necessarily pour a ton of snaps into their backups either. They ride their starters for as long as they can, and you might have more incentive to do that this year than before, which is, again, a wild thing to think of, because the starters aren't exactly like rugged veterans and guys who've gone through this before. It's mostly like kind of green guys who are either new to this level or new to college in general, or being on the field too, but people are just kind of going, give it time. They'll work. And they have plenty of time, and those guys are going to get a ton of reps too. Let's just stick right there. Let's start with the back end of the defense, because there is more to say about them. There is more to discuss about the possibilities and the combination of potential, and the conversation thins considerably once you work to the front. So we'll save the front for the finish. We'll start in the back. Cat, Marcus Floyd, free Aubrey Burks, Spear, Davis, Mallinger. I'm willing to say the two of those three are sure things right now as far as penciling him in on a depth chart here at the end of April. I just don't know yet about Mallinger. Lots of potential, lots of talent. You can see him when he runs around, and he's long too. He's quick. He's kind of big, not scared. But also they got Jasir Cox for a reason. We'll see about St. McLeod, kind of get mixed reports on that, what's going on there. But at the minimum, they have an option coming in to compete with, complement someone who hasn't played the position before and is still kind of new to defense. I don't know. Is that a fair assessment? Free Cat, no problem. Spear, TBD.
Yeah, I feel Floyd, for sure. As the spring was going on, I was thinking to myself, yeah, they're going to try him there and move him back to corner. And then it became very evident that no, they're not going to move him back to corner. He is going to play cat, or that's where he's going to play. He's back there at that safety spot, and if that's where he's best, and I don't think you need to force a second corner. I think it's important to make sure that you have somebody you trust on the back end, and if that's who they trust back there, they need him back there. So I don't think he's moving from that spot. I am leaning more towards Cox starting at that spear spot. I don't think you bring in a veteran senior in that role, and they told him this is where we're going to play you. I don't think they bring him in if they don't expect him to start. And then that third safety spot, I'm all over the place. I mean, I think it could be Burks. Again, depending on what's going on with McLeod, maybe you talk about moving him to that spot if he's coming back, if he's capable of doing that. What about Mallinger? Because Mallinger's been at all three safety spots, and he hasn't even been on campus for a year yet. So he's been kind of cross training and all those things. And maybe you just try to find the best one available out of all those options to fill in that, or maybe the best option still isn't even on campus yet. So I feel confident and good, or maybe too strong of words, but I feel like Cox is your spear, Floyd is what is it, cat or free cat, and then after that, kind of figure out that third guy.
Yeah, I kind of feel like if they are going to add the secondary, which does seem like they're intent on doing with one, maybe two, it might be free, which is kind of unusual because I do think they like Aubrey Burks a whole lot, but we'll see there. Hershey McLaurin they've recruited. Haven't seen or heard a ton of him, but I mean he did run around and make some plays at the end of that game too, so that's helpful. Could he be? I mean, why would you go and get a free if you have a guy like McLaurin that you're developing? But maybe it's somebody who has a lot of experience and can do something like that too. And I think you're right. Just because it's the end of the spring doesn't mean it's the end of the experimentation phase. Maybe Floyd's better. I don't think they're going to move Floyd, but like a corner is oftentimes well suited to play free safety because he understands everything in front of him and what everybody's supposed to do. Cat's a little bit different from free. I don't know, the technical mumbo jumbo is probably kind of boring, but a free safety is a free safety, and a cornerback, I understand that. I just wonder about like what they're trying to do back there. Like they played a lot of quarters in zone last year just to suit who they had, especially at safety. But now you look at, certainly Floyd, more of a corner. He can run and play man at cat, which you kind of like. And then Spear, Mallinger can definitely run. Man-to-man potential there too. And I just get the sense they want to be more close to the receivers and press them more and play like man or bump and run more. And that might have to do with their personnel, which means that your free's going to have to be a guy who runs around and covers a lot of territory. If Burks is good at that could have something to do with it. I guess my point is not being in the meeting rooms and not having all the insight I want, all the access I want to what they're trying to do. It's hard to say who's going to go where, but that's what this part of the season is about right now, is that they're going to sit down and, have a retreat sometime next month. And just kind of like grease board all this stuff and say, all right, who goes where, but also who puts us and what combination of players put us in the spot that let us complete this picture that we want to present to an offense. Like we want to be a man team and play less zone. Well, we got to have this guy here. We can't put him here. Those are questions that they're going to answer to, and that'll have a lot to do with what we see. But those safety spots are important because they're not just like keep the roof on the defense guys. They play coverage. They come down. They have to stop the run. You have to be versatile too, and not a ton of bodies right now. And even if you bring somebody in, there's a learning curve there too. But to your point, lots of combinations of possibilities. It's not finished yet. No breaking news there. Sorry, I should turn my cell phone off. Corner, Woods, definitely.
Yeah. And
then I'm probably higher on Andrew Wilson-Lamp after the spring game than I was before, and I try not to do that, but he's the guy that I hadn't seen practice a whole lot because it was Malachi Ruffin days typically went out there. Similar to quarterback, I hadn't seen a lot of Will Crowder because it was always Garrett Green or it was always Nico Marchio. And frankly, in the practices, that 7-on-7 stuff, that's geared toward the receivers no matter what, and the offense no matter what. But I liked what I saw from Wilson Lamp. He can definitely move. I thought that last year they had him returning kicks and punts as a true freshman. Another converted receiver, but he recovered a couple times, and not just like deflect balls or to get a pass break up, but he recovered to get back into plays, maybe discourage a pass. I was just watching him. He moves pretty smooth. That length helps. He's 6'2", probably longer than that too with his arms. He can obscure a lot of stuff too, close some windows, deflect some passes. I feel a lot better about that corner 2 spot. Not great, but a lot better. And certainly him above Ruffin, who had a hard time sticking with guys, and then certainly Mumu bin Wahad and Tyron Woodby. So to me, 1-on-1, Woods and Wilson Lamb seem pretty clear to me.
I am with you 100%. And I was the same way. And we keep saying don't take too much into the spring game, but you could see his athleticism, his recovery, and like you said, his length, I think, is what stood out most to me. He seemed to kind of, I don't want to say lock down, but he was able to cover a lot of space and just cast a wide net whenever the ball was coming his way, kind of like, a big lanky receiver, which is what he was. And now he's a big lanky cornerback, which helps him keep big lanky receivers from catching the ball. And so I was pleasantly surprised by what I saw from him in that spring game, even if it was the spring game, even if it was pretty limited. But I don't think there's any doubt that it's Woods and Wilson Lamp right now for those 2 cornerback spots. Let's say that I know you didn't want to have me on the post-game pod because of my Preston Fox pick, and I would never shut up about it. But that also came with some intel from some people that told me that essentially the entire second team secondary, especially the cornerbacks, were just getting destroyed in spring practice, in scrimmages, every time they got into 7-on-7 or 11-on-11. And obviously Fox would be lining up as the second team receiver against the second team corner. And sure enough, hops right out there and does whatever he wants to do. And a lot of what I saw from those second team corners was pretty discouraging. Discouraging maybe is too hard of a word because they're freshmen, they're young guys. A couple of them should still be in high school right now. So it's an area where they need to get better because they need to add depth back there. They have gotten lucky, I would say, the past few years of just riding the same 2 corners every single game for almost every snap. It kind of bit them last year when Fortune came out, but Woods stepped up and did a nice job. I don't think you can rely on just 2 corners. You need to have 3. You need to have 4 probably that are game ready. And West Virginia does not have 4 game ready corners right now. They do not. And so I think that second string needs to adjust quickly, or that could be an area where West Virginia adds somebody down the road. Or again, maybe this is where Jacoby Spells steps right in. Highest recruit in the class. He's ranked highly for a reason. Maybe he steps right in and is your second string corner.
Caleb Coleman's definitely a safety, right?
I think so. I think he lined up at Cat, I think, in the spring game.
Yeah, correct. He's the backup there, but he has some corner experience. Trying to think of what they could do with their roster. Like, we don't think Floyd's going to do it. Coleman has played it before. McLaurin's too big, I think. I know. I mean, he's big. I just think that if it's not Spells, it's going to have to be somebody that's going to the portal with. I feel more convinced now they're going to go for the portal for a corner there too. And I don't know, we'll see. There's a lot to like there from the top end, and you certainly give guys like Woodby, who didn't play football last year, give him a chance to use some time on the game. Bin Wahad just make the leap. Bin Wahad's a pretty impressive athlete, though, just watching him compete out there. And again, didn't make all the plays, but he wasn't out of position or lost on times when he was physically into the play. Mental stuff happens. I get that. A lot of pressure, but need to do some work there one way or the other too. You want to take a stab at linebacker, because there are some developments here, I think.
Yeah, I think we didn't get to see X-Ray Low at all this spring, but I feel like it was trending towards Lance Dixon even before Lowe was out this spring. I they split time, so however you want to put it for that will spot, Dixon and Lowe over there. Mike Lee Koba, they've been talking him up. He was out there with the starters. Maybe they add Tyreek Austin Cave, the Miami transfer who's coming in this weekend. Maybe he pushes for that starting spot, but I have a hard time seeing it being anybody but Koba for the moment. Bandit, I think, is interesting because it was Bartlett and it was, I'm blanking, Alabama transfer. Now he's in Cowan, splitting time. And then at the end of the year, for the final 3, maybe 4 games, Linnell Carr started there, and I believe played the most snaps. Now, we saw Bartlett be great, and we saw him be not there. Like, he's on the field, but you don't even know it because he's not really doing much. And that's something that Neil Brown has talked about, how he needs to be more consistent. So I'm curious how they're going to split those reps, because Bartlett and Carr are 2 very different body types. Now, both of them do a good job of getting after the passer, but they're 2 very different body types and do, I feel like, different things other than getting after the passer.
Yeah, combinations there too. Carr's an edge player. He's like a defensive end who can play like stand up, right?
Right.
An outside guy. And it looks like Bartlett's like more of like a Mike, probably going to be a better blitzer between the tackles or between the guard and center. So that's good. I like that. That's a combination, but is it transparent to the offense? Maybe. Probably shouldn't have that. I'm with you on Will. Dixon, man, he got beat for a touchdown on that pass from Sam James, that 4th and 7 pass. The fact that he was in the play was pretty remarkable, because I think I might do a film thing on this. They ran the same play twice, except James changed his route the second time, went vertical instead of parallel, and Dixon recovered really smooth and ran with Sam James. The throw is perfect, and 31 yards is not enough time for him to complete the comeback on that route. But he made that harder than it should have been for the quarterback and the receiver. The throw had to be perfect, and it was. There's no safety back there, but like Dixon's good at that will spot. If he can run around and cover and tackle, they're going to be okay there. Lowe's a fine backup. One name you did not mention, kind of like Ja'Cory Hammond.
Yeah, he was in there. He's playing Mike with the second team, right?
That was a bandit, and they said, nah. And I was like, well, if he's not a bandit, then safety, spear, like what? No, we're going to put him on Mike. And I was like, really? And just hadn't seen him do a whole lot. Like, he was like 3rd team and then like collection of other guys in the days that I saw him practice. He was in there 2s, definitely some 3s, but feisty, man. Like, he got in there and mixed it up, was not afraid to go in and just like smash himself into a gap or try to make something happen there too. That's something you can definitely build with. I'm not saying that you start from the ground up with like reckless abandon, but if you're a Mike, you're not making plays if you're tiptoeing, if you're trying to slice through gaps, whatever. You're going to have to go in hard sometimes too. And I don't know where he goes, but just the samples there, I was like, all right, that's something there too, because they don't have anybody else in Mike. Caden Bizer's there. Hammond's totally different. Bizer's, probably not as athletic, maybe knows the position a little bit better because he maybe practiced more last year, including. For first time I got eyes on Hammond, I was thinking that was not bad. There's something there that you can certainly see happening. Question is it in 2022? I'm not sure. That just seems like a spot they're going to have to. Is Austin a Mike for sure?
Yeah, I feel pretty confident that's probably where he's going to end up at. I mean, I know they get a little, moving around Mike and Bandit and everything, but he was mostly lining up on the interior at Miami, and that's where he was recruited for out of high school.
Just makes sense then, I guess. Okay. Finally, defensive line. No questions here. From end to tackle, Taj Austin, Jordan Jefferson, Dante Stills. The fun starts in the backup spots, and then if you want to have a whole lot of fun with it, your 4th offensive lineman when they go even front. I guess the point here is that they have 3. They probably have more than 3 they really like. Who would be your 4th, Chris? If you had to, like we do offensive line, well, they have 5, but they have, who's their 6th guy? Well, they have 3 because they play an odd front. Who do you think their 4th guy is?
Well, I'm going to cheat a little bit because I'm going to go, well, I kind of feel like it's Sean Martin anyway right now.
Bingo.
And part of the reason I think that is because, one, you can slide him in there, and I think he fits, and he looked really good in that spring game. And on a day when the offensive line had a solid day, I think he was one of the bright spots for that defensive front. I think he got some nice extension on guys, was able to kind of push back and kind of bull rush a couple of the offensive linemen when he had a chance. But and I did this with the offensive line, when you look at the guys that the coaching staff had with the first team defense, obviously they had Stills, Alston, Jefferson, but instead of putting their second string with the second string defense, they kept their rotation guys on the first team. And there were 3 other defensive linemen that West Virginia had on the first team. So they had 6 defensive linemen with the first team defense. Stills, Alston, Jefferson, Martin Would you like to take a stab at the other two?
So Thornton?
Nope.
Oh, well, then I'm out. Tell me.
Hammond Russell
Hmm.
and Taurus Simmons.
How about that?
And Simmons was somebody that Neil Brown singled out after the game in his post-game comments from the field as somebody that had a very strong day and somebody that had, over the course of the last couple of weeks, really stated a case for receiving more playing time in the fall. So that's not somebody we've talked about a ton, but he was there. And well, let me rephrase this, because he was on the gold team, but then was wearing a blue penny and was also out there with the blue team.
Mm-hmm.
So he was a blue team starter, which was second string defense, but also a gold team backup going against the first team offense. So whatever it is, he was listed on the gold, played some with the blue, and Neil Brown pointed him out as one of the standouts on the defensive line.
Can I pause for a second? You
Sure.
saw Hammond Russell play Saturday?
I did not.
Okay. I want to make sure I heard that properly.
But I was going to say, I'm just going off of what was listed on the thing, because I think it's pretty clearly to me, and apparently you, that Martin is 4, right? Number 4.
Oh, yeah.
After that, just off the roster, it was Russell and Simmons. I think you dive into guys that were hurt this spring. Like, Russell, again, I didn't see him play. I don't remember him playing. Vistaranen is somebody that played last year, has been out all spring. So that would be somebody that would probably be in the 2 deep once we get into fall camp in the fall. And then, of course, they're bringing in Mike Lockhart, the Georgia Tech transfer, who has played in 25 games in college already. So it seems like they are still looking to develop that depth in that rotation.
The thing I like about Martin, and you mentioned this, he created space with his arms. He plays like Alston, but he plays where like Stills and Jefferson play. And his body's just not like Dante Stills, and it's not like Jordan Jefferson. It's more like Alston, but he's not like a 5 or a 9 technique guy right now. I mean, I guess he could play like the defensive tackle spot, but they played him inside and even fronts, and they played him obviously the tackle spot. But I like him. I think he's going to do something this year that the time is right for him, and he's done everything he's supposed to do to launch himself forward there too. I liked what I saw from Jalen Thornton there. You mentioned Taurus Simmons. Those are guys that kind of give him numbers there. When healthy, Hammond Russell's going to be a player there. Now you're talking about 4 or 5 guys when they get Ed Vistaranen back who can roll in and out too. Will they do 9-10 in the defensive line in a game? Maybe, because I think they want to keep their top guys fresh. But the fact that you can do that and you can get into different combinations, that's good. And I know they're entertaining the Lockhart kid, but boy, that's not a need for me. If you only had one left, I'm not sure that'd be your need. Now, will you take him because he's a quality player who has some time left? Sure. You've mentioned the fact that there's a difference between a right now guy and a right now your role is to be a backup, but you have a chance to be somebody later on. That does kind of make some sense, but I wasn't concerned about the defensive line before, even without Akeem Mesidor, and I don't feel much different about it right now.
With you. Yeah, Lockhart's definitely one of those guys that, hey, come in, you have some experience, you can be our 5th guy, 6th guy, and then when Alston and Stills leave, maybe somebody else is out after that. I mean, Jefferson's a junior. Maybe that's a role where Lockhart takes on a bigger role because he's going to have 3 years of eligibility left. So, yeah.
Before we wrap up, a reminder. Chris and I will execute a very silly but very significant draft here. One of us will get the first pick. One of us will get the second and third pick. Snake draft, whatever. Fantasy purposes, if you want to think of it that way. But we're going to pick first team offenses and defense however order we want to. It doesn't have to be we're picking offense first and then defense, but how will you fill out a top 11 in offense and defense? We've sketched out the 2 deeps in back-to-back podcasts here, but once May 1st rolls around, players are into and out of the portal. We can expect some Mountaineers to go in. We can expect the Mountaineers to fish out, or at least try to, a couple of players in the coming days here too. That'll shape the roster and the pool of available players. But we're going to pick from people who are on the roster and incoming recruits, the batch that'll arrive over the summer, and then try to figure out what our best 11 will look like on offense and defense, and just simulating this in my head and on paper. It's kind of a different exercise to look at what is good, and then how many different directions you can go with their offense and their defense, which we have kind of, again, sketched out by looking at the two deep and also the different possibilities for, defensive line, secondary, offensive line, receivers, so on and so forth. But pretty flexible team that may be able to adapt to different opponents or strengths of their offense, their defense, no matter what the opponent is doing. If they're good at something, it may be because of the way they've arranged the pieces. And I think this little draft will give us a way to take a look at that. Excited, Chris?
I am. I think we did something kind of similar to this with like basketball, like maybe the all-decade team or something like that. And it was fun to see how much better my team was than yours.
I'm not good at these things usually, so I'm going to go hang up with you here and then go start sitting in the library, having a coffee, trying to figure out how I'm going to win this battle.
All right.
Best of luck to me. Until then, I'm Mike Casaza.
And I'm Chris Anderson.
We'll talk to you later.